The night my family tried to execute me, they made one mistake. They gave me weapons. My name is Adrian, and until that night, I was the unwanted son of a noble house famous for producing legendary fighters. Marcus, my father, could split a fortress gate with one swing. Grant, my older brother, had awakened a rare blade class at 16. Even the servants could throw a knife straighter than I could. I awakened nothing. For 3 years, every class crystal turned gray when I touched it. Every instructor called me empty. Every guest at our estate looked at me like I was a cracked cup somebody had forgotten to throw away. Grant made a game of challenging me in front of crowds, then knocking the sword from my hand before I finished raising it. I learned to smile. Not because I was weak, but because people reveal everything when they think you cannot hurt them. Marcus finally decided my existence embarrassed the family too much. He did not announce an execution. That would have created questions. Instead, he invited me beneath the estate to see the Black Treasury, a sealed chamber filled with forbidden equipment, collected over hundreds of years. Every artifact inside had killed at least one owner, some had killed dozens. Marcus opened the iron door, and told me I could choose one weapon to prove my worth. Grant stood behind me, pretending he was there to witness my final chance. The moment I stepped inside, the door slammed shut, locks turned, runes ignited across the walls. Then poison gas began pouring from stone mouths near the floor. Grant laughed from the other side. He told me to pick a weapon quickly. Maybe one curse would kill me before the poison did. I looked around at racks of black swords, screaming helmets, chains that moved like snakes, bows strung with human hair, and one cannon with a warning plaque nailed to its barrel. Then something finally awakened inside me. A dark window of light appeared before my eyes. Hidden class awakened, cursed arsenal, curse immunity acquired, recoil immunity acquired, madness immunity acquired, life drain immunity acquired, equipment corruption immunity acquired, negative equipment effects will be converted into usable power. I stared at the message for 1 second. Then I started laughing harder than Grant. The nearest weapon was a thin black sword called Widow's Argument. According to the tag, it whispered violent commands until its owner attacked everyone nearby, then forced the owner to stab himself. I grabbed it. A voice instantly hissed inside my skull, telling me to kill. I told it to wait in line. The madness became focus. My thoughts sharpened so much I could hear the poison gas moving through the room. I swung once, and a black arc crossed the treasury. 3 weapon racks split in half without the sword touching them. On the other side of the door, Grant stopped laughing. I picked up a pair of iron boots called the Last Steps. They had marched every previous owner off a cliff. The curse tried to seize my legs. Instead, I gained perfect movement. I took 1 step and appeared on the ceiling. I took another, and ran sideways along the wall. By the 3rd step, I was moonwalking above a pit filled with cursed spears. That was when I understood my class was not simply protecting me. It was translating every curse into the opposite advantage. Anything designed to ruin its owner became a gift in my hands, so I stopped choosing carefully. I equipped everything. A red glove that crushed the wearer's bones, gave me enough grip strength to bend steel. A silver eye patch that showed endless nightmares, let me see attacks several seconds before they happened. A necklace that drained 1 year of life every minute, filled my body with violent energy. A belt that attracted lightning made blue sparks crawl over my skin. A cloak that slowly ate its owner, wrapped around me like a loyal shadow, and started eating the poison instead. The gas vanished. I inhaled the last cloud, and burped black smoke. Then I found the cannon. Its name was Backlash. The plaque warned that each shot carried enough recoil to turn the shooter into red mist. I lifted it with one hand, pointed it at the treasury door, and pulled the trigger. The blast sounded like the sky falling down a staircase. A beam of white fire erased the door, the wall around it, and a straight path through 6 underground rooms. I did not move an inch. The recoil entered my class, became stored force, and made every artifact on my body hum with excitement. Grant was standing at the end of the new tunnel, with his hair blown straight backward. Marcus was beside him. Neither looked embarrassed anymore. They looked terrified. I stepped through the smoke wearing mismatched boots, 12 rings, 3 belts, the hungry cloak, the silver eye patch, and enough weapons to start a small war. Several swords floated behind me because I had run out of places to hold them. The class called that skill Grave Rack. I called it convenient. Marcus recovered first. He drew the family's sacred blade, and demanded that I remove the cursed equipment before it consumed me. I pretended to wobble. Grant immediately smiled. That was the second mistake they made that night. I let the black sword tremble in my hand. I dropped to one knee. I whispered that I could not control the voices. Grant rushed forward, eager to finish me himself and claim he had stopped a cursed monster. The silver eye patch showed me every step before he took it. I waited until his blade was 1 inch from my neck, then I tilted my head. His sword missed, struck the hungry cloak, and vanished halfway into the fabric. The cloak chewed through the sacred blade like a dog eating a stick. Grant pulled, screamed and lost his grip. I stood up. The weak act disappeared from my face. I tapped his chest with one finger. Stored recoil exploded through the touch. Grant flew backward, punched through a marble pillar, bounced off a statue, and landed inside a decorative fountain 3 floors above us. I had not even known the tunnel reached that far. Marcus attacked next. Unlike Grant, he was actually dangerous. His aura filled the corridor with golden pressure, and the floor cracked under his feet. He swung a plain training sword, because his sacred blade was currently being digested. The strike carried enough force to cut the whole estate in half. I raised the red glove and caught it. The blade stopped between my fingers. Marcus pushed with both hands. I used one finger. Then I smiled and asked whether this counted as proving my worth. His face changed. For the first time, Marcus realized the empty sun had been watching him for years. I knew he always shifted his right foot before using his strongest technique. I knew his left shoulder had never healed correctly after an old dungeon injury. I knew he relied on overwhelming power because nobody had forced him to think in a long time. I twisted the sword out of his hands, hooked it with a floating chain, and used the last steps to run around him so fast the chain wrapped him from neck to ankle. The chain was called Honest Restraint. Its curse tightened whenever the trapped person felt killing intent. Marcus wanted me dead very badly. The chain squeezed until he could barely breathe. I could have ended both of them there, but killing them would have been easy, and easy would have taught them nothing. I wanted everyone who had laughed at me to understand exactly what they had thrown away, so I freed Marcus just enough to move, tossed Grant beside him, and walked out of the ruined estate. Before leaving, I took the black treasury with me. Not the room, everything inside it. Grave rack expanded as I fed it more cursed energy. Swords, axes, bows, chains, shields, rings, masks, boots, and one extremely angry chair folded into black light and vanished behind me. I could summon any of them with a thought. The chair kept trying to bite me, so naturally I used it as a throne. By sunrise, I reached the city outside the estate. I had no money, no allies, and no reputation beyond being the useless son of a powerful family. I also had 87 cursed artifacts, a cannon that could erase buildings, and a class that grew stronger every time something tried to ruin my life. I considered that a good start. My first stop was the Ash Forge, the only workshop in the city willing to examine forbidden equipment. The owner was Tessa, a weapons scholar with soot on her face, burn marks on both gloves, and no instinct for self-preservation. She opened the door, saw me wearing enough cursed jewelry to haunt a cathedral, and threw a hammer at my head. I caught it. She threw a second hammer. I caught that too. Then she asked why I was not dead. I placed Widow's argument on her counter. The sword began whispering. Tessa immediately covered it with 7 sealing cloths and backed away. When I pulled off the eye patch, she noticed black symbols circling my pupil, and nearly set off an alarm crystal. I told her the simple version. Curses did not harm me, they powered me. She called that impossible. I put on a ring called the Miser's Loop. It normally turned everything the wearer touched into useless copper, including bones. I tapped a gold coin on her desk. The coin became a fist-sized block of shining metal, because my class reversed the loss. Tessa stared at it. I tapped her broken furnace. The rust became polished steel. She stopped calling me impossible, and started calling me dangerous. That was fair. Tessa examined my class through a testing crystal, and discovered another feature. Every curse I endured created malice charge. I could spend that charge to amplify an artifact, combine several effects, or temporarily force a weapon beyond its normal limit. The stronger the curse, the more ridiculous the result. I asked whether she had anything truly awful. Tessa led me to a locked basement. Inside was a black gauntlet chained to the floor. It had belonged to an executioner, who could crush monsters with one hand. The gauntlet slowly replaced the wearer's thoughts with the rage of everyone it had killed. Tessa warned me that touching it for even a second could destroy my mind. I slid it on. Thousands of furious voices rushed into my head. My class converted madness into parallel thought. Suddenly, I could think about thousands of things at once. I calculated the weight of every weapon in the forge. I memorized every crack in the walls. I planned 6 escape routes, 3 meals, and a way to improve backlash by using the lightning belt as a charging coil. I also realized Tessa had hidden emergency explosives under the counter. I told her the left fuse was damp. She checked. It was. For the first time that morning, she smiled. Then the gauntlet punched me. Not someone wearing it, the gauntlet itself. Its fingers bent backward, grabbed my face, and tried to tear my head off. I laughed, grabbed the wrist with the red glove, and started arm wrestling my own hand. Tessa watched in complete silence as I slammed the gauntlet against the table 3 times. After that it behaved. Mostly. By noon, word had spread that a badly dressed young man had entered the Ash Forge carrying forbidden weapons. A gang of curse dealers surrounded the workshop. They sold unstable artifacts to desperate fighters, then collected the bodies and sold the same items again. I knew their type immediately. They did not see me as dangerous, they saw me as inventory. Their leader stepped inside holding a hooked dagger that leaked green smoke. He ordered Tessa to move, and told me every cursed item I carried belonged to him now. I asked him to take whichever one he liked. Tessa looked at me as if I had gone insane despite the immunity. The leader chose a golden bracelet from my wrist. It was called Friendly Fire. It forced the wearer's attacks to strike the person they trusted most. He put it on. I stepped back. His own gang stared at him. He swung the hooked dagger at me. The blade curved in midair, flew out of his hand, and stabbed the man standing closest to him in the boot. That man fired a bolt at me. Friendly Fire redirected it into another gang member's belt, cutting it cleanly. His pants fell down at the exact moment he tried to leap. The entire attack collapsed in 6 seconds. I did not throw a punch. The leader ripped at the bracelet, but cursed items could not be removed while their condition was active. He panicked and attacked again. Every strike bounced toward his allies. Daggers cut straps, clubs hit shins, a fire spell lit 3 expensive coats, and 1 mustache. I sat in the biting chair and watched. When they were all on the floor, I used honest restraint to tie them into one screaming bundle, then I dragged them through the city behind me while the chain rolled them like a giant wheel. Cole, the captain responsible for arena security and illegal artifact crimes, met me halfway to the holding cells. He was a broad-shouldered man with tired eyes and the expression of someone who had already dealt with too much nonsense before lunch. He looked at the rolling bundle. Then he looked at me. Then he asked whether any of them were dead. I said no. One of the men rolled past and shouted that his mustache might never recover. Cole decided that still counted as alive. The gang had hidden stolen equipment across 3 warehouses. Instead of giving Cole a long explanation, I let the miser's loop touch the leader's dagger. The weapon's curse reversed and projected every place it had harmed someone as a trail of green light through the streets. Cole followed the trail and found the warehouses before sunset. That was the first time the city stopped laughing at me. It was also the first time Marcus learned I was not crawling back. He sent Grant to bring me home. Grant arrived at the Ash Forge with 20 family fighters and a smile that was trying very hard not to shake. He announced that I had stolen sacred property and become corrupted by forbidden equipment. I stepped outside carrying no visible weapons. Grant relaxed. He still had not learned. He ordered the fighters to surround me. Cole was nearby, but I signaled for him not to interfere. I wanted Grant to attack in front of witnesses, and Grant wanted to prove he was not afraid. We were both about to get what we wanted. I told him he could take me back if he landed one hit. Grant drew a new sword. It was fast, bright, and completely ordinary. He probably thought ordinary steel would bypass my cursed advantages. I put my hands in my pockets. He lunged. The last steps appeared on my feet in a flash of black light. I slid backward without moving my upper body. Grant chased. I slid around a fountain, up a wall, across a hanging sign, and along the side of a moving carriage. He followed until he was red-faced and furious. Then I ran straight toward him. At the final second, I stepped on the air above his head. Grant swung upward and cut through the rope, holding a stack of empty barrels. The barrels fell around him. Before they hit the ground, I summoned the lightning belt. A spark jumped into the metal hoops. Every barrel snapped together into a spinning cage with Grant trapped in the middle. The cage rolled downhill. I walked after it. Grant screamed threats, while the cage bounced through a fruit stand, crossed a bridge, and landed directly in front of Cole. Cole looked at me. I told him Grant had attacked first. 30 witnesses agreed. Grant spent the night in a cell beside the curse dealers. I spent the night learning how to make 87 cursed weapons dance. Tessa spent the next week turning the Ash Forge into the loudest building in the district. I did not train by swinging one sword 10,000 times. That sounded boring. I trained by swinging 10,000 swords once. Grave rack opened behind me like a black sun. Every artifact flew in a different pattern. Axes spun low. Spears stabbed from blind angles. Chains curved around obstacles. Bows fired without hands. Backlash hovered over my shoulder and blasted targets whenever I snapped my fingers. At first the workshop lost 3 walls. Then I learned control. By the 3rd day, I could peel an apple with 12 knives while using a cursed shield as a frying pan. By the 5th, I could fire backlash downward, convert the recoil into speed, and launch myself across the city like a human cannonball. My landing still needed work. One morning I crashed through Tessa's roof, slid through a pile of coal, and stopped with my face inside a bucket. She handed me a broom. I used a wind-cursed fan to clean the entire forge in one blast. The forge became clean. The street outside became black. Cole arrived covered in coal dust and told me my training had officially become an arena security concern. That was when he brought news of the royal tournament. It was the largest combat festival in the kingdom, held once every 4 years. I did not care about the royal guests or the noble seats. I cared about the prize. The champion received permanent access to the Deep Vault, a collection of artifacts too dangerous for normal fighters to study. Marcus had spent years preparing Grant to win. I decided I wanted the prize, not to annoy them. That was just a bonus. Tessa said my current equipment was powerful but chaotic. If I entered the tournament wearing 3 belts and an angry curtain, the judges might mistake me for a cursed laundry cart. She had studied an ancient armor set, known as the Morning King. 5 pieces had been scattered after each one killed its owner in a different way. The hollow helm trapped the wearer inside an endless nightmare. The famine plate devoured strength, magic, and body heat. The grief mantle made every wound ever suffered reopen at once. The abyss greaves dragged the wearer toward the deepest nearby point. The heartless core replaced the wearer's heartbeat with a countdown. Together, they formed black armor that had never been worn as a full set. Nobody had survived long enough to assemble it. I asked where the pieces were. Tessa showed me a map of the Howling Foundry, a dungeon built inside a dead volcano. Cole told me the place had been sealed after several teams vanished. I asked whether the seal was strong. It was not. An hour later, I stood before the volcano with backlash over one shoulder and the biting chair strapped to my back. The chair had insisted on coming. I entered alone. The first chamber was filled with iron hounds, whose bodies were made from broken weapons. They smelled my equipment and charged. Each one opened a furnace mouth wide enough to swallow a person. I let the first one bite me. Its teeth closed around the famine necklace on my chest. The necklace tried to drain the beast. The beast tried to eat the necklace. My class stood between them and converted both attacks into energy. For 3 seconds, nothing happened, then the hound inflated like a metal balloon. I kicked it into the others. The explosion launched a storm of red-hot swords through the chamber. I used the silver eye patch to read every path, then walked between the blades without turning sideways. One sword passed under my chin, another shaved a loose thread from my sleeve, a third flew straight at my eye. I caught it between my teeth. The remaining hound stopped. I spat the sword into the floor, and summoned the red glove. They tried to run. Grave rack opened above them. Chains dropped like fishing lines, hooked every hound by the tail, and lifted them into the air. I spun once. The chains spun with me. Soon I had a circle of furnace beasts orbiting my body. I called the move Dog Star, then I threw them through the next 3 doors. That saved time. At the center of the foundry, I found the hollow helm sitting on a throne of skull-shaped anvils. The moment I touched it, the chamber disappeared. I was back at the estate. Grant was laughing. Marcus was telling me I had awakened nothing. Every person I had ever met stood around me, repeating every insult I had heard since childhood. The nightmare wanted me to believe I was weak again. I looked down. The biting chair was still strapped to my back. It bit me. Pain snapped through the illusion. I thanked it, removed it, and sat down in the middle of my own nightmare. The false crowd kept mocking me. I listened carefully until I found the one voice that did not belong. A whisper beneath all the others was telling the illusion what to show me. I used the executioner's gauntlet. Thousands of parallel thoughts spread through the nightmare. Instead of fighting the images, I gave the helm too many. I imagined Grant with a duck's head. I imagined Marcus dancing in pink boots. I imagined the estate made of cheese. The nightmare tried to keep up. The walls melted. The false crowd started quacking. A giant wheel of cheese rolled through the dining hall and flattened every insult at once. The hollow helm cracked. Then it appeared in my hands, completely silent. I put it on. The world became clear. Its curse reversed into dream sight. I could now see fear, intention, and hidden energy as shapes in the air. Lies looked like smoke. Killing intent looked like red thread. Traps looked like glowing teeth. The rest of the dungeon suddenly seemed very honest. I followed a river of red thread into the lower foundry, and found the famine plate nailed to the chest of a giant made from molten iron. It had 6 arms, no face, and a stomach that opened like a furnace door. It attacked before I reached the floor. 6 fists came down. I fired backlash upward. The beam struck its chest, but the famine plate ate the energy. The giant grew larger. Its head punched through the ceiling. Lava poured over its shoulders. I could have kept firing until it burst, but that would have damaged the armor, so I gave it something tastier. I summoned Widow's Argument and threw the sword into its open stomach. The plate devoured the sword's violent curse. Then I threw in Friendly Fire. Then the life-draining necklace. Then the lightning belt. Each curse made the giant stronger, but it also made the curses interact. Friendly Fire redirected the giant's strength toward its own body. Widow's Argument ordered all 6 arms to attack. The lightning belt attracted the lava. The necklace drained the furnace feeding it. The giant punched itself in the face with 6 fists while lightning cooked it from the inside. I stood on a rock and applauded. When it finally collapsed, the famine plate slid across the floor to my feet. I equipped it. Cold darkness swallowed my body. The plate tried to consume my strength. My class reversed the hunger. Instead of draining me, the armor began eating hostile energy around me. Heat vanished from the lava. Red light disappeared from the chamber. Even the sound of falling rocks grew quiet as the plate swallowed the force behind them. I punched the ground. Everything the plate had eaten came back at once. The foundry floor dropped 50 feet. I landed beside the abyss greaves. Convenient. The greaves tried to drag me toward the deepest point in the dungeon. I let them. They pulled me feet first through stone. I crossed 3 underground levels in seconds, smashing through floors while sitting comfortably in the biting chair. Monsters looked up just in time to see me falling through their rooms like a black meteor. At the lowest point, the greaves stopped. I stood in a chamber shaped like a heart. The heartless core floated above a pool of dark liquid, beating once every 10 seconds. A countdown appeared in my vision. 10, 9, 8. I grabbed the core. 7. It replaced my heartbeat. 6. My chest went silent. 5. My class tried to reverse the curse, but there was no steady effect to convert. The core was not draining life. It was waiting to erase it all at once. For the first time since entering the treasury, I faced a curse that immunity alone could not solve. 4. I could have dropped it. I did not. 3. The hollow helm showed me the core's intent as a tight red knot. It was not counting down to my death. It was counting down to an explosion of stored life force. 2. I opened Graverack and summoned every life-draining artifact I owned. 1. The core exploded inside my chest. The necklace, cloak, rings and famine plate all tried to consume the blast. My class converted the life drain. Backlash absorbed the recoil. The executioner's gauntlet split the pain across thousands of thoughts. Black light tore through the dungeon. The dead volcano woke for exactly 1 second. A pillar of fire blasted from the summit and shaped itself into a laughing skull above the clouds. People in the city saw it from miles away. Tessa later told me she had dropped an entire tray of tools. Deep underground, I was still standing. The heartless core had fused with my class. Now every curse in Graverack beat in time with me. I did not have a normal heartbeat anymore. I had an armory pulse. Every beat charged every weapon. I laughed so loudly the remaining monsters fled. The grief mantle was guarded by the foundry's final creature, a serpent made from chains and blades. It had wrapped the mantle around its head like a hood. Each time it moved, the cloak reopened cuts along its metal body, making it angrier. It struck from the dark. The hollow helm saw the red thread. I stepped aside and allowed the abyss greaves to pull me downward. The serpent missed and stabbed its head into the floor. I ran up its neck, summoned 30 weapons, and planted them along its spine like handles. Then I grabbed the first sword, and played the serpent like a giant instrument. Each weapon carried a different curse. One made its body lighter, another made it heavier. A hammer reversed direction every time it hit. A tuning fork turned pain into sound. I struck them in sequence. The serpent bent left, right, up, and backward. A terrible melody filled the chamber. The creature tied itself into a perfect knot. I pulled the grief mantle free, wrapped it around my shoulders, and let it reopen every injury I had ever suffered. There were many: broken ribs from Grant's training, burned hands from failed class tests, cuts, bruises, and one humiliating bite from the chair. Pain hit me from every direction. My class converted it into memory, not vague memory, perfect combat memory. I remembered every blow, every angle, every mistake, and every moment I had failed to react. The mantle turned my suffering into a library of lessons. In one breath, years of losing became years of training. I looked at the knotted serpent. It looked nervous. I flicked one finger against a floating hammer. The hammer struck a sword. The sword hit a chain. The chain pulled a spear. The spear tapped the serpent's tail at the exact weak point I had noticed during the fight. The entire creature fell apart into neatly sorted pieces. Tessa was going to love that. I left the foundry wearing 4 pieces of the Morning King set, and carrying the heartless core inside my chest. Black armor covered my body. Thin blue fire moved through the seams. The grief mantle flowed behind me without touching the ground. The hollow helm hid my face except for one silver eye. The set bonus appeared. All equipped curses may now share effects. I immediately tested it. I gave Backlash the Abyss Greaves pull, the Famine Plate's hunger, and Widow's Argument's aggression. Then I fired at the sky. The beam did not travel forward. It dragged the sky toward itself. Clouds twisted into a black spiral. Lightning bent sideways. For one awful second, the moon looked slightly closer. I stopped the shot. A small piece of the mountain floated past me. I decided the set worked. When I returned to the city, the Royal Tournament qualifiers had already begun. Tessa took one look at my armor and closed the forge door. She opened it again after checking that the street was empty. Then she asked where the 5th piece was. I said I had all 5. She pointed out that the Heartless core was supposed to be worn on the outside. I tapped my chest. The forge windows shattered from the armory pulse. Tessa sat down very slowly. Cole arrived with a stack of complaints about the volcano, the skull-shaped fire cloud, and a mountain fragment that had landed in a public bath. Milk is Katie Adbia. I told him nobody had been hurt. He told me that was not the only standard. Then he handed me a qualifier token. Cole had watched my family use influence and fear for years. He could not openly favor me, but he could make sure the rules were followed. He warned me that Marcus had entered Grant and several hired fighters. He also warned me that somebody was buying anti-curse weapons in bulk. I did not need to guess who. The qualifier arena was designed to test 100 fighters at once. The goal was simple: hold a stone platform in the center for 10 minutes, while everyone else tried to knock you off. I arrived wearing ordinary clothes. The crowd laughed when they recognized me. They had heard rumors, but rumors shrink when the person in front of you looks unarmed. Grant stood on the central platform surrounded by allies. He did not attack me immediately. He wanted me buried under the first wave. I walked toward him. 90 fighters rushed me. I summoned one item. The biting chair appeared beneath me. I sat down, then grave rack opened. The sky above the arena turned black with weapons. The laughter stopped. I raised one hand like a conductor. Every sword pointed down. 90 fighters froze. I could have crushed them. Instead, I fired chains into the ground around the platform. The chains formed a spinning fence. Anyone who attacked me was caught, lifted, and gently launched into the spectator cushions. The first fighter flew out, then the second, then 12 at once. Soon bodies were sailing over the arena wall in a perfect rhythm. The crowd started counting each landing. A hammer user tried to dig under the chains, so I used the miser's loop to turn the soil beneath him into polished copper. He slipped, spun 3 times, and launched himself out. A firecaster attacked from above. I opened the hungry cloak. It ate the fire and burped smoke in his face. He landed backward in a water barrel. Grant watched his allies disappear until only he and I remained on the platform. He drew an anti-curse spear. The spear created a white field that silenced cursed equipment. My floating weapons dropped. The crowd gasped. Grant smiled and charged. I caught the spear with my bare hand. He had forgotten something important. The curses had trained me. The grief mantle had given me perfect memory of every defeat. The executioner's gauntlet had taught my mind to process thousands of angles. The last steps had taught my body impossible balance. Even without active effects, I was no longer the boy he used to knock around. I twisted the spear, stepped behind him, and tapped the back of his knee. Grant fell. I took the anti-curse spear, broke it across my leg, and threw both halves outside the field. Grave Rack woke up. Every weapon rose again. I leaned close and told Grant he should have brought an anti-Adrian weapon. He did not have one. I sat back in the chair while honest restraint wrapped him into a neat package. For the remaining 9 minutes, he hung upside down above the platform like a warning decoration. I qualified without standing up. The main tournament began 3 days later. Tessa spent every hour before it repairing the Morning King armor, though repairing was not the right word, nothing had damaged it. She was adding channels so my curses could flow between pieces without turning the city inside out. She also removed the biting chair from grave rack. I put it back. A champion needed a seat. When the arena gates opened, the kingdom's most famous weapon users marched onto the field. One carried a spear that had slain a sea serpent, another held a bow said to shoot through mountains, a swordsman walked with a blade that burned so brightly the stone beneath him smoked. The crowd roared for each of them. Then my gate opened. I entered wearing the complete black armor. The hollow helm turned every torch blue. The famine plate drank the heat from the air. The grief mantle stretched behind me like a shadow with claws. The abyss greaves made the ground sink beneath each step. 87 cursed weapons floated in rings over my shoulders, and backlash hung above them like a second moon. My armory pulse sounded once. Every legendary weapon in the arena trembled. The spear user stopped walking. The mountain bow lowered by itself. The burning sword went out. Those weapons knew what the crowd did not. Every item around me had killed an owner, and I was wearing them all like festival clothes. I passed the famous fighters and sat on the biting chair at my starting mark. It snapped at my leg. I kicked it once. The first match put me against the sea serpent spear user. He attacked before the signal echo had faded. Water exploded from his spear and formed a twisting beast large enough to fill half the arena. I opened a paper umbrella. The crowd went silent again. The umbrella was called Clear Weather. Its curse summoned lightning whenever it was opened indoors. We were technically outdoors, so I used the hollow helm to project the image of a ceiling across the arena. The umbrella believed it. Lightning struck me. The belt and grave rack attracted it. Backlash stored the force. The famine plate drank the water beast. In 1 second, the giant wave became a glowing blue sphere floating above my palm. The spear user tried to stop. I flicked the spear into the umbrella. Clear Weather fired every bit of lightning and water back as a spinning storm dragon. The dragon chased him around the field, through 2 pillars, over the arena wall, and into the contestants' waiting area. He returned a minute later riding on its head, screaming that he surrendered. I closed the umbrella. The dragon became rain. My second opponent used the mountain bow. He could fire arrows that grew larger with distance, so he leaped to the far edge and aimed from half a mile away. That was clever. I liked clever. His first arrow became the size of a tower. I summoned a tiny cursed needle called Last Complaint. Its curse made every wound feel 1,000 times worse. Since it could not harm me, I had never found a use for it. Until then, I threw the needle at the giant arrow. The arrow was not alive, but it carried its owner's aura. Last Complaint magnified the smallest flaw in that aura. A hairline crack became a canyon. The tower-sized arrow split into millions of harmless glowing feathers. The bow user fired 10 more. I sent 10 needles. The sky filled with light. While the crowd watched the feathers, I used the last steps to run across them. Each feather existed for less than a second, but the silver eye patch showed me where the next one would appear. I crossed half a mile through the air, stepping on falling light. The bow user looked up just as I arrived. I tapped his bow with the miser's loop. The legendary wood became soft copper, and bent into the shape of a question mark. He stared at it. I told him that was also my question. He surrendered. By the semi-final, nobody laughed when I entered. Grant was waiting for me. Marcus had found him a weapon designed specifically to destroy cursed artifacts. It was a white blade carved from the tooth of a holy beast. Each swing erased curses from whatever it touched. Grant had also changed. He no longer smiled. Humiliation had stripped away his carelessness. For the first time in our lives, he studied me instead of assuming he was better. That made him more dangerous. The match began, and Grant ignored my floating weapons. He rushed straight for my chest, aiming at the heartless core. I fired chains. He erased them. I sent axes. He erased those too. Every cursed item touched by the white blade vanished from grave rack for several seconds. Grant cut a path through my entire arsenal and reached me before I could raise backlash. His blade struck the famine plate. White light flooded the arena. The plate disappeared. Grant's sword reached my chest. Then it stopped against the red glove hidden beneath the armor. I had allowed him to erase the outer pieces. The executioner's gauntlet was still on my other hand. The last steps were still under the abyss greaves. Widow's argument was still inside grave rack, whispering directions. My class did not live in the armor. The armor lived in me. I caught his wrist, stepped around the blade, and used his own momentum to send him toward the arena wall. Grant flipped in midair and landed cleanly. He was improving. He attacked again with a technique Marcus had used against me years ago. The right foot shifted, the left shoulder dropped. Golden force gathered along the white blade. I knew the strike before he did, but instead of dodging, I opened my arms. Grant hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. He wanted to beat me, but some part of him finally understood Marcus had turned us into weapons pointed at each other. I did not depend on that part. I depended on the angry sword. Widow's argument appeared behind Grant and whispered into the holy blade. The white weapon had spent its entire existence destroying curses. It hated them more than any living person could. My class let the two weapons share effects for one heartbeat. The holy blade became cursed with the need to erase curses. The nearest curse was Widow's argument. The sword ripped itself out of Grant's hands and chased the black blade around the arena. Widow's argument flew in circles, insulting it. The holy blade followed, cutting pillars, banners, and one judge's table in half. Grant stood empty-handed. I walked up and tapped him on the forehead. Stored recoil launched him upward. Honest restraint caught him at the highest point, and lowered him gently outside the ring. I could have humiliated him again. I chose not to. Grant looked back at Marcus instead of me. That was when Marcus made his final mistake. He had never planned to trust the tournament. Beneath the arena, he had planted the final artifact from the Black Treasury, one I had not seen because he had removed it years earlier. It was called the Coffin Maw. The artifact was not a weapon. It was a prison for a creature that ate enchanted equipment and grew stronger from the owners it killed. Marcus believed it would devour my cursed arsenal, erase the evidence, and make my death look like another forbidden equipment disaster. He opened the prison. The arena floor split. A mouth the size of a castle gate rose from the darkness. It had no eyes, no legs, and hundreds of arms made from broken weapons. It swallowed the center platform, 3 stone towers, and the white holy blade in one bite. The crowd ran. The legendary weapon users attacked together. The sea serpent spear shattered. The mountain bow snapped. The burning sword was eaten. The coffin maw grew larger with every artifact it consumed. Marcus tried to leave. Cole blocked the exit. I saw Marcus's killing intent with the hollow helm. Red thread stretched from him to the creature, and from the creature to me. Cole saw enough from his position to understand who had released it. Marcus ordered Grant to help him escape. Grant did not move. For once my brother made a smart choice. The coffin maw turned toward the fleeing crowd. Thousands of people were trapped behind fallen stone. If I chased Marcus, the creature would eat them. So I let Cole handle the man who had already lost. I handled the monster. I recalled every cursed weapon, and stood alone in the center of the broken arena. The coffin maw opened wide. Inside its throat were pieces of every legendary artifact it had swallowed, spinning like teeth. Tessa shouted from the forge platform that it would consume anything enchanted. I smiled beneath the hollow helm. That was exactly what I needed. I sent Graverack forward. All 87 cursed artifacts flew into the monster's mouth. The crowd thought I had surrendered my arsenal. Marcus laughed. Even Cole looked worried. But I had learned something in the Howling Foundry. Curses did not simply add together, they argued. Friendly fire made the coffin maw attack what it trusted most, its own hunger. Widow's argument ordered every broken weapon inside it to fight. The necklace drained the power it had stolen. Clear weather filled its stomach with lightning. The abyss effect pulled its upper jaw toward its lower jaw. The grief effect reopened every wound from every battle it had ever survived. The creature slammed its own mouth shut. Then backlash entered. I had stored recoil from every cannon shot, every explosion, every fall through the dungeon, and every heartbeat of the Morning King set. I released all of it inside the coffin maw. The monster expanded. For 1 second it became perfectly round. Then it shot straight upward. The roof of the arena exploded as the coffin maw flew into the sky like a screaming black comet. I used the last steps to run up falling chunks of stone, chased it above the clouds, and summoned the biting chair. I sat down in midair. The chair bit the creature. The coffin maw had consumed legendary swords without reacting. It screamed when the chair bit it. I knew I had kept that thing for a reason. While it thrashed, I placed both hands on its body and activated Cursed Arsenal at full power. Instead of letting the creature eat my equipment, I made my equipment eat the creature. The famine plate returned around my chest. Black armor spread over the coffin maw. Its hundreds of weapon arms folded into the grief mantle. Its teeth became new blades in Graverack. Its endless hunger poured into the heartless core. My armory pulse shook the clouds. The monster shrank from the size of a fortress to the size of a shield. I equipped it. A new black plate appeared over my left arm, shaped like a closed mouth. Coffin guard acquired. Anything the shield consumes may be fired back with accumulated force. I looked down at the ruined arena, then I fired the shield at the empty sky. Every attack the coffin maw had swallowed returned as one beam. Water, fire, arrows, holy light, broken sword aura, and black curse energy twisted together into a pillar that punched a clean hole through the clouds. Sunlight poured through. I dropped back into the arena wearing the restored Morning King set. Graverack opened behind me, now holding more than 100 weapons. The coffin guard growled on my arm. The biting chair landed beside me and pretended it had done most of the work. Nobody argued. Cole had Marcus bound in honest restraint. The chain tightened each time Marcus looked at me, so he had folded into a very uncomfortable shape. Grant stood nearby with his hands lowered. Marcus shouted that I had ruined the family. I removed the hollow helm so he could see my face. I told him I had improved it. Cole took Marcus to the deepest holding cell beneath the arena. The curse dealers he had worked with joined him before nightfall. Grant was not imprisoned. He had fought me fairly in the match and refused Marcus's final order. I did not forgive him, but I did not need revenge from a man who had finally seen the cage around him. The final opponent withdrew after watching me turn the arena-eating calamity into a shield. That was how the useless son became royal tournament champion. I stood on the rebuilt central platform, while the same crowd that once laughed at my empty class shouted my name. Tessa placed the champion's medal around the neck of the hollow helm, because touching my armor still made her nervous. Cole gave me access to the deep vault, and warned me not to fire anything upward again. I promised to think about it. Marcus lost the estate, but I did not move into his room, or sit at his table. I turned the upper halls into a training ground for fighters rejected by normal classes. The Black Treasury became an open forge under Tessa's control, with heavy walls, stronger seals, and a chair-shaped cage that never worked for long. Grant returned once to ask for training. I handed him a wooden spoon cursed to insult its owner. He stayed. For the first time he learned to fight without a legendary weapon, or Marcus whispering in his ear. As for me, I entered the deep vault. Rows of sealed artifacts stretched farther than I could see. Some cried, some laughed, one tried to bite me through 7 walls. They all became silent when my armory pulse sounded. At the very end of the vault stood an empty pedestal. Above it floated a map burned into black metal. 7 marks glowed across distant lands. Beneath the marks was a message carved by someone who had possessed my hidden class centuries before. The 7 calamity vaults were opening. Not because of me, their seals had been weakening for generations, and the coffin maw had been only the first creature to escape. My new shield opened one narrow eye. Every weapon in grave rack turned toward the northern mark. Then the entire city shook, as something enormous moved beneath the mountains. I put on the hollow helm. Tessa asked whether I planned to investigate. Cole told me not to destroy the road. Grant tightened his grip on the insulting spoon. I opened grave rack, climbed onto the biting chair, and aimed backlash toward the horizon. Being thrown away had made me dangerous. Being underestimated had made me clever. And now, somewhere beyond the mountains, 7 ancient disasters were about to learn the worst possible lesson. Never give a cursed weapon to a man who can equip everything.